Steve Ramsey recently put out a video stating he was going to be looking at his scrap wood when starting a new project rather than buying all brand new material. And that's exactly what I do. So I found this sheet that happened to be 4 feet by about 35 inches. And I thought it was perfect for this project. Since it's 4 feet wide and I needed 4 sides, I started off by cutting 4 panels of 12 inches. Then I grabbed each panel and cut 4 slats out of each one so that I had 16 total. Because I didn't want them sitting flush with one another, I put a round over bit in my router and just quickly went over the edges. Then I took 4 slats and glued them together to make up the side panel. In this clip, since I'm low on space, I have 2 panels on one board. Unfortunately, I still only have 8 clamps, so I used my straight board and ratchet strap method in order to glue these up. After letting them sit for about 2 hours, I took everything off and then used my table saw to put in a 5-degree bevel on the bottoms. Since I wanted my sides to have a taper, I grabbed a protractor and clamped it in place to where the 90 lined up with the edge. Then I grabbed a string and taped it in place. I was going to use a 5-degree angle, however that landed in the valley of 2 slats, so instead I used 4. Once I found where that measurement fell, I used a tape measure to transfer it to the other side. And then I was able to use a straight board to make a straight line from top to bottom and create that taper that I was looking for. Then I clamped all 4 boards together, making sure all my ends were flush, and used a circular saw in order to cut those 2 tapers. To get away from compound miters and tapering legs, I actually just used the butt joint in order to make the body of my planter. So I made sure that the ends were flushed and then used my nail gun in order to join them together. Then I grabbed some 3/4 inch scrap cedar boards and cut 1.5 inch strips. Then I tilted my blade to 45 and ran the strips through again to create a bevel. These pieces are going to be my corner trim pieces. To attach them, I first put down some glue, then put the trim pieces in place and used a nail gun in order to attach them permanently. To make horizontal rails, I cut a few more 1.5 inch strips, then set it in place and marked either side. Then I set my miter to a 4-degree angle and cut both sides until the piece was able to fit where I wanted it. I used the same process to cut 2 more for this side, then used a nail gun to attach all 3. I flipped it over and just repeated the process until all 4 sides were covered. Now for some top trim. I yet again cut 1.5 inch strips, then used my table saw to cut in the miters. Just to make things a little more decorative, I went over each piece with the Roman ogee bit. I then glued and nailed the 4 pieces together. To create a shelf, I grabbed some cutoffs and nailed them inside, checking for level as I went to make sure that they lined up with one another. Now I was able to grab a few more cutoffs to lay on the ledges I just put in, and this makes a shelf. Put on some wood filler, some primer, and also a coat of paint, which I distressed. Well, here we are. Not that there's anything wrong with the last one. In fact, now that I have a plant in it, I'm actually quite fond of it. But it's just, this is the idea that I saw whenever I thought of putting planters on my front porch. So I'm just so happy that I remade them and that they turned out this lovely. I think they're lovely, but this is definitely my taste and style. What do you think? Do you like this one better, or do you like the square one? Leave me a comment in the section below. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Next week, another planner video. No, I'm just joking. Next week, I'm actually going to attempt to install an AC unit in my shop. So stay tuned and we'll see how well I can pull off that project.